Hi, this is Al Williams of Sunset Hill Solutions. In this video we'll be having a look at calculation contexts, and we'll be using Business Objects 4 and Web Intelligence. I'm going to break this video up into three parts. The first part will be a discussion of default calculation context when you're working with data in a Web Intelligence report. The second part will be creating a basic example, replicating work that you can do in Excel that you can also do in Business Objects using context operators and keywords. And the last part will be a brief overview of the different context operators, how they work, as well as some of the context keywords, and just some practical examples of how those work in a Web Intelligence report. So before I get into a discussion about calculation context, I want to give you a brief preview of the example that I'm going to be working through. So I'm sure, as most of you who use Business Objects are aware, there's a lot of people in almost every organization that write reports that will just bring in the most basic information. So in this example I'm using the eFashion universe. I'm just bringing in the category dimension and the sales revenue measure. Now what a lot of people do is once they get this basic result, they want to have some fancy formatting and some percentages and so forth. So rather than do it in Web Intelligence, they'll go ahead and export the document as Excel. And once the user has the results in Excel, that's when they'll go ahead and they'll do their formatting and further calculations. So if you have a look at the finished product here, so this is the same data in Excel, but I formatted it, getting rid of some of the grid lines and adding a percentage total in the column to the right here, and just changing some of the formatting, making it look a bit nicer. So in this example, we'll be showing you how you don't need to export the data to Excel to achieve this type of functionality. You can do it right in Web Intelligence. Let's have a look at the default calculation context in Web Intelligence. I'm going to go ahead and create a new report. So I've opened up Web Intelligence application, click on New, select the universe. So I'm going to select the eFashion universe. So I'll bring in the objects that we want for this report. So as you can see, I've brought in the product category, product line, the year, quarter, product, SKU number, which is basically the description, the state, city, and sales revenue. So I'm going to go ahead and run this query. So now that we have our results, just to show you how the context of the calculations work, I'm going to delete this table and create a new table just to build it up and show you how the calculations changed based on the dimensions that are selected. Alright, let's delete this table and we'll start from scratch. I'm just going to bring in initially the state and the sales revenue. So by clicking them and dragging them in here. Now as you can see, we only have 8 lines in this report, 1 line for every state with the total revenue in the database. So the calculation context of the sales revenue is everything for the state of California for all of the sales for all of the years, because we haven't placed any filters on the time periods. Now if I bring in the lines dimension, now we see that for California we have a number of different lines of products, and for every one we have the total sales revenue. So previously we saw the total sales revenue just for the state of California. Now we're seeing it for each of the lines in California. Before I go any further, I want to make a change to the data that I brought back. I didn't want the SKU number, I wanted the description. So I'm going to go into the Data Access tab, edit the data provider, get rid of the SKU number and add the SKU description and run the query again. Okay, so the query came back. Now I can go ahead and break this down even further. I can go ahead and at the category. So now we see for California, we don't just have one line of accessories, we have a number of lines for all the different categories of products that make up, or all the different categories of items that make up the accessories line. I can further drill down by dragging in the SKU description, which is really the product name. So now we see for every product sold in California, we see the sales revenue broken down. So by default, this is how Business Objects performs the calculations in a block of data. I'll just show a couple more features of how it handles calculations by default. So we just have all the results here in one big block of data. If I want to create a couple of sections, for example, I want California to be a separate section in this report, I just drag that cell up here. So now I see a section for California. It's only showing the results for California until we get to the next state. And then I can go further and say it's another section for the accessories line. Then I can put a total here. If I go select the column, go to analysis and click on the sum button. So now if I scroll down for California accessories, I see that we have a total of $1.869 million. Now we'll start the first example I want to show you. So the end result we want is something that looks like this. So this is in Excel, and this was by exporting some raw data and doing some formatting in Excel. We want to do this in Web Intelligence, so I'll walk you through step by step of how to achieve this functionality. To save a bit of time for this example, I've created a new Web Intelligence report using the eFashion universe. I've brought in the product category, product line, the state, and the sales revenue. And I just deleted the table that appeared after I ran the query, so I can start from scratch. So I'm going to bring in category and sales revenue. So as you can see, we're seeing a lot more results here than we were in the Excel spreadsheet, which only had a few categories listed. And the reason is I filtered this data. So I'm going to go ahead into analysis, and I'm going to show the filter bar, and I want to have the state be California, and I want to have the product line be accessories. So now we're seeing the same raw data as we had in the Excel spreadsheet. The category of products in the accessories line in California, and now we want to add a total to this data. We also want to add a percentage of total in a column to the right of the sales revenue. So let's get started on formatting this report the way we want it to. The first thing we're going to do is highlight this sales revenue column, make sure we have the analysis tab selected, and the functions, just add the sum function. So now we have a total sales revenue for all categories. The next thing we want to do is create a variable. So right click on variables and new variable. And I'll call this revenue in block, and the formula, I'm just going to paste it here. So what I'm doing is I'm saying the sales revenue measure, I'm using the in keyword, or sorry, the in operator, and I'm using the block keyword. So I'll just make sure that this formula is correct, and I'll click OK. So what happens now if I drag this variable into the report, you'll see I'm getting a line. Every line here is showing the total revenue in this block of data. Now we're going to remove this in a minute, but we need this number in order to do the calculation that we want to do. Because if you recall, in Excel, we need to get the percentage. So in order to have the percentage, we have to be able to reference the total. And of course in Excel it's very easy. You reference the actual cell that you want to perform the calculation on. Well, you can't do that in Business Objects. You have to do it a different way, and that's by using the context operators and keywords. In order to calculate the percentage, we're going to create another variable. So I've called this variable revenue in block percentage, and the formula is the sales revenue divided by the variable that we just created, revenue in block. I'll click OK. Let's bring in the revenue in block percentage variable that we just created. Now let's format this data as percentage. So if you have format selected on top and then numbers down here, just go down to the last one, which is the percent. So now we are seeing the percent of total for each of the categories, and that's what we want to have. So at this point we can proceed with formatting this report to look just like it did in Excel. So the first thing is we don't need this column in the report. It was just there to show you the totals and how they can appear in each line if you want them to. So now we have the data that we want. We just need to make this report look a little bit nicer. So let's go ahead and quickly format this report. The first thing I want to do is change the name of the column headers. By default, it's the name of the object that's in the body of the report here. So I'm just going to go ahead and change the first column to product category. And then I'll change the next two columns. So I've changed the middle column to sales instead of sales revenue, and the last column I've changed to percent of total. Next I want to format the header, these three cells, and I want to align them to the center. So if I right click on any one of those cells when I have them all chosen, I can click on Format Cell. At this point I want to change the appearance. I want to set the color to no color and no pattern here, and the font I want to have changed the color. Previously it was white. I want to change it to this dark blue, and click Apply. Okay, so now we have a white background. I want to get rid of the borders around these cells, so I'm going to highlight them again, just go to border and click on clear. Now we have no border. Next thing I want to do is add a border on the bottom. Okay, we can't see it yet because of these grid lines. We'll see it in a few minutes. Now for this block of data here, I want to format these cells. I'm going to change the appearance to no color. I want to change the font to, I will just leave it as the default color. And the border, I want to have no border around these cells. Click Apply. So we're getting close now. Now we want to make sure we have a total here. So I'm going to click on the sales column, go to Analysis and add a total. I'm going to do the same for the percent. I'm just going to change this cell to say totals. Next thing we want to do to format this report is put a line above and below the totals, the total cells here. I'm going to select both cells, click on Format Cell, go to Border. I'm going to add a line at the top, a line at the bottom, and I want to make that a thick line. And click Apply. So now we have a line above and below the totals. Now I want to change the report name. Total sales per category. Now the one final thing I want to do is add some conditional formatting like we had in Excel. In the Excel spreadsheet we applied some conditional formatting to any value in the percent of total column that was less than 10%. You can see these appear in red. We can do the same thing in Web Intelligence. To apply conditional formatting in Web Intelligence, select the Analysis tab and the Conditional tab down here, and we're going to add a new rule. So I'm going to call this revenue percentage less than 10%. Now I select the filtered object or cell, which in this case is our variable, revenue and block percentage, which is the far right column. And I want to say less than or equal to. And I want to type a value of 0.1. by default, when you add a formatting rule, the default appearance is to have red text with a white background, and that's what we want in this case. We could change it to have a different color background or different color foreground if we wanted to. I'm not going to bother doing that, so I'm going to click OK. So you'll notice it didn't apply that formatting rule. The reason is I have to specifically select the column that I want that rule to apply to and check that box. So now we're seeing every item in the percent of total column that's below 10%, it's appearing in red. So we have used context, operators, and keywords in a real basic example and formatted this report to look just like you can do in Excel. The next part of this video we'll have a look at context operators and how they work. So to get started here, I've created a new web intelligence report based on the eFashion universe, and I brought in the lines, month, quarter, state, week, and year dimensions, and the sales revenue measure. The first context operator we'll have a look at is the in-context operator, which by definition specifies dimensions explicitly in a context. So to see how that works, let's go ahead and create a new variable. So I've named this variable in year. I've made it a measure, and the formula is the sales revenue using the in-context operator year. So this will be the sales revenue for the entire year. Click OK. So let's go ahead and bring that new variable into the report. And you'll see in every row we're seeing a value of $8.095 million. So what this in context operator has done is it's explicitly referenced the total revenue for the year, and it's ignoring the week and quarter dimensions that we have in this block of data. To prove that this number is right, we'll just create another, we'll add another report here, and we'll bring in the year and sales revenue. You can see the sales revenue for the year of 2004 is 8.095 million, and that's exactly what's showing up in this column in the report using the in-context operator. The next one we'll have a look at is the for each context operator, which adds dimensions to an existing context. This is kind of hard to wrap your head around, so we'll have another example here. I'm going to create another variable. At least it was difficult for me at first to wrap my head around it. So I've called this variable for each state, and it's a measure. And the formula is I want the maximum sales revenue for any state based on the quarter, year, and week that we have in this report. So I'm going to make sure that formula is correct. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to bring that variable into the report. So now we have these different values here. So for 2001, quarter 1, week 2, we're seeing a value of 32,548. So this should be the state that has the highest amount of revenue for 2001, quarter 2, week 2. Now we should prove that this is actually working, so we're going to create another report here, and we'll make sure that these values are in fact correct. So we'll go ahead and create another report to validate that the for each state variable is correct. I'm going to add a report. And in this report, I'm going to bring in year, quarter, week, state, and sales revenue. I'm going to go ahead and create a section for the year. Then I'm going to sort the results in this block of data. I'm going to go to Sort, Manage Sorts. So I've added a few sorts. I've added a sort to quarter, to week, and then a descending sort on sales revenue. Click Apply. Okay. So let's switch back to the original report. So we're seeing 2004, quarter 1, week 2. The maximum state revenue is 32,548. If we go ahead and look at this report we just created, we'll see that the state of New York had revenue of 32,548 in quarter 1, week 2. If we go to week 3, the maximum was Texas at 100,268. We go back to our report, and we're seeing that value appear for quarter 1, week 3. So this for each operator is working the way we intended. Now we'll have a look at the for all context operator, which removes dimensions from a context. So let's go ahead and create a new variable to show how that works. So I've called this variable for all week, and the formula is sales revenue, the for all context operator, and week. So what this should do is remove the week dimension from the calculation so we see the totals by quarter. Make sure this is working. It is. I'll click OK. Let's go ahead and bring the for all week variable into the report. So now I'm seeing the same value of $2.66 million for every row of quarter 1. And we go into quarter 2, I'm seeing a different value. So this should represent the total sales revenue for quarter. We've removed the week dimension from the calculation. Now let's create a new report just to validate that this variable is working the way we intended it to. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new report, and this one I'm just going to bring in the year, quarter, and sales revenue. I'm going to go ahead and create a section for the year. So we're seeing in 2004, quarter 1, that's at $2.66 million, which we're seeing for every week of quarter 1 in the original report, and for quarter 2, 2.278, and that's indeed what the total quarterly results are. So hopefully by having a look at those 3 context operators, you can see that by using those you can really do some dynamic analysis in Web Intelligence, probably some types of analysis that if you haven't used those context operators before, you probably weren't aware that you could even do in Web Intelligence. Now we'll have a look at context keywords that you can use. So what I've done here is I created a new Web Intelligence report, and I brought in from the eFashion universe the category lines, quarter, and year dimensions, and the sales revenue measure. We're going to have a look at the block and the report keyword. I'm not going to be looking at all of the keywords that are available. I suggest after you have a look at this video that you have a look at the help file for Web Intelligence, and you can see that there's a body keyword, a section, and a break keyword, and they all have similar functionality but a little bit different based on the context that they're used. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new variable. So I've called this variable revenue in block. It's a measure, and the formula is the sales revenue in block. So we're using the in keyword. Just make sure that the formula is good. It is, so I'll click OK. Now before I use this variable, I want to create a couple of breaks on, or sections on year and the line. Just move this over a bit, and this. Okay. So now I will add the revenue in block variable to the report. And we're seeing $2.546 million. This is very easy to validate. If I just put a total on this block, go to analysis and add a sum, we'll see it's the same value, 2.546. So the in block keyword has added this total to every line, so you can perform percentage calculations like we did in the example in the middle of this video, where we tried to replicate some functionality you can do in Excel. Now we'll have a look at the report keyword. So I'm going to create another variable. So I've called this variable revenue in report. It's a measure, and the formula is sales revenue in, and then using the report keyword. Okay, I'm going to click OK. Alright, I'm going to drag that variable into the report. Revenue in report. And we're seeing a value of $36 million, and it shows up in every block of data here, because we want this to be the total revenue for the entire report, for all years, all products, all lines, etc. Now we'll go ahead and prove that this value is correct. So we'll just quickly create a new report and we're just going to add the year and sales revenue, and we'll sum this, and we see the total for all years is 36 million, which agrees to the value that's showing in this variable. So that's about all I want to cover in this video tutorial. We covered the default calculation context in Web Intelligence. We had a look at an example of how to achieve Excel type functionality in Web Intelligence using context, keywords, and operators, and performing some formatting of the report. And finally, we had a look at all of the context operators and illustrated 2 of the context keywords and showed how they work and how the calculations are performed. So this is Al Williams of Sunset Hill Solutions. I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you.